Imagine waking up in a luxury bar with no memory of how you got there, only to realize that the person you love most in the world is the one you have to kill to survive. You're standing in front of a white-haired bartender who looks more like a statue than a human, and he tells you one simple thing. If you want to leave, you have to play a game. And your life is on the line. But here's the kicker. You aren't actually alive. You're already dead. And this bar is the last stop before your soul is either saved or erased forever. Welcome to Quindecim, where the drinks are cold, the stakes are eternal, and the truth is the most dangerous weapon of all. By the end of this game, you won't just be fighting for your life, you'll be begging for the void. The story takes place in a world where there is no heaven or hell, only a mysterious system of bars, where the deceased are judged. When two people die at the exact same time, they arrive at a place like Quindecim. Our protagonist, Decim, is an arbiter, an emotionless being whose only job is to draw out the darkness in human souls to decide their ultimate fate. He doesn't judge you by your prayers or your bank account. He judges you by how you act when your back is against the wall and your soul is screaming in agony. This is the world of Death Parade, and the judgment is about to begin. The doors of the elevator slide open, and we meet Takashi and Machiko, a young, beautiful couple who were supposedly on their honeymoon. They're confused, scared, and completely unaware that they died in a horrific car accident just moments ago. Decim greets them with a chilling calmness, explaining that they cannot leave until they play a game. The game? Darts. It sounds simple, almost boring, until the board starts spinning and the rules are revealed. Each section of the dartboard is linked to a specific organ in their partner's body. You hit a triple 20, and your partner feels like their heart is being squeezed by a red-hot iron. This isn't just a game. It's a torture session designed to strip away the mask of happily ever after. As the game begins, Takashi and Machiko try to be kind. They try to miss on purpose. But pain has a funny way of making you forget your manners. Every time one of them gets hurt, the resentment starts to bubble up. Takashi starts remembering things, small doubts, whispers of an affair, a suspicious phone call. He looks at his wife, the woman he promised to protect. And suddenly, he doesn't see a lover anymore. He sees a stranger. The atmosphere in the bar shifts from confusion to pure, unadulterated dread. You can feel the tension through the screen as Takashi's grip on the dart tightens. But that was just the beginning. The physical pain begins to pale in comparison to the psychological trauma. Takashi, fueled by jealousy and the agonizing pain in his own body, starts aiming for the high-score targets. He wants to hurt her. He wants her to admit she cheated. Machiko is screaming, crying, pleading for him to stop, but the game demands a winner. This is where the story takes a dark, visceral turn. Takashi lands a hit that sends Machiko to the floor, clutching her stomach. In a moment of pure desperation, Machiko shouts that she only married him for his money and that the child she's carrying isn't even his. It's a gut punch that leaves the viewer and Takashi reeling. But what he didn't know was that some lies are told to protect, while others are told to destroy. Now, if you thought that was a straightforward case of a cheating wife getting what she deserved, Episode 2 flips the entire script on its head. We see the same events through the eyes of a mysterious black-haired woman who has just become Decim's assistant. She's human, or at least she looks it, and unlike Decim, she has something the arbiters lack: empathy. She watches the replay of the game and points out something Decim missed. Machiko wasn't lying because she was evil. She was lying because she saw the look of absolute hatred in Takashi's eyes. She realized that if he went to the void, believing he had killed an innocent wife and his own child, his soul would be crushed by guilt forever. She sacrificed her own reputation in her final moments, just so he could find peace. This revelation hits like a freight train. It challenges the very foundation of the arbiter system. Decim, the man who is supposed to be an infallible judge, might have actually made a mistake. He sent Machiko to the void and Takashi to be reincarnated based on a performance, not the truth. This is the first time we see a crack in Decim's cold exterior. He begins to realize that without understanding the human heart, his judgments are nothing more than a coin flip. The episode ends with a chilling question. How can you judge a soul if you've never felt what it's like to have one? The real nightmare was about to start for Decim, as he realizes his new assistant isn't just a helper, she's a mirror reflecting his own flaws. He looks at the two elevators, one leading to reincarnation, the other to the abyss, and for the first time, the Arbiter feels the weight of the lives he holds in his hands. The game of the couple was just the warm-up. The bar is open, the next guests are already in the elevator, and the judgments are only going to get more brutal from here. What if the person you finally worked up the courage to love was already dead? And you just didn't know it? Imagine standing in a bowling alley where every strike you throw doesn't just knock down pins, it vibrates through the literal heart of the person standing next to you. In Quindecim, love isn't just a feeling, it's a physical weight you can feel in your hands. And for our next guests, that weight is about to become unbearable. You see, the afterlife doesn't just care about your sins. It cares about the things you left unsaid, the faces you forgot, and the regrets that keep your soul anchored to a world you no longer belong to. This time, the game isn't just about survival. It's about remembering a life you were too afraid to live. The story takes place in a world where memories are stripped away the moment you cross the threshold of death, leaving you with nothing but a primal instinct to stay alive. Decim and his human assistant, the woman we now know as Chiyuki, are watching the elevator doors again. This time, two young people step out. Shigeru, a polite college student, and Mai, a shy girl who seems strangely familiar to him. They don't remember how they died, and they don't remember each other, but as the neon lights of the bar flicker to life, the game is set. They're playing bowling, but these aren't your average plastic balls. Inside each ball is a human heart, the heart of their opponent. Every time Shigeru throws a ball, he can feel Mai's pulse thudding against his palm. It's an intimate, terrifying connection that forces them to face a truth they buried long ago. The tone is deceptively light. Unlike the screaming match of the first game, Shigeru and Mai actually seem to enjoy each other's company. They start to realize they went to the same school, that they shared the same bus rides, and that Shigeru had a massive crush on a girl who looked just like Mai. But there was a secret hidden beneath her skin. A secret that only the pain of the game could reveal. As they play, the memories start rushing back like a flood. Shigeru remembers the girl he loved, but he doesn't realize that Mai is that girl. She had plastic surgery to change her face because she was so insecure, thinking she wasn't good enough for him. But the real nightmare was about to start when the scoreboard didn't just show points, it showed their final moments. They died in a bus crash, a mundane accident that cut their potential short just as they were finally finding each other. This episode is a masterclass in what could have been. Decim watches them with his cold, calculating eyes, but Chiyuki is starting to influence him. She points out that they aren't fighting, they're bonding. Even in death, they are choosing kindness over the instinct to win. It's a beautiful, heartbreaking scene where they use their final moments to go on a date in the bar. But as the game ends, the judgment must be made. Shigeru and Mai are sent to be reincarnated together, leaving the viewers in tears. However, Quindecim isn't always this kind. The next elevator is already moving, and the guests coming up are far more damaged. Is a waking nightmare. We are introduced to Misaki, a famous TV personality and mother of 5, and Yusuke, a shut-in otaku who spent his life staring at screens. They couldn't be more different, but they share one thing, a deep-seated resentment for the lives they led. The game they have to play is a classic arcade fighter, but the arcade cabinets are rigged. The buttons don't just control the characters, they trigger physical pain in the players. Every punch landed in the game is a punch felt in real life. The screen wasn't just showing pixels, it was showing their sins. As the fight escalates, Misaki loses her celebrity persona and turns into a feral, desperate woman. She starts smashing the buttons, fueled by the rage of a life spent being used by men and failing her children. She wants to live not for her kids, but because she's terrified of disappearing. On the other side, Yusuke is a shell of a person. He remembers his mother's neglect and how he eventually took his own life because the world felt too heavy. He doesn't want to win. He just wants the pain to stop. But that was just the beginning. The game forces them to see each other's memories, and Misaki sees the boy she could have saved, while Yusuke sees the mother who never loved him. The violence in the bar becomes stomach-churning. Misaki, in a fit of blind panic, tries to literally strangle Yusuke to stop him from winning. She's screaming about her kids, about her career, about her right to exist, while Yusuke just stares at her with hollow eyes. This is where the real escalation happens. Decim steps in, not to stop the fight, but to push it to its limit. He wants to see the truth of their souls. Chiyuki is horrified. She sees the cruelty in the Arbiter's methods. She sees that Misaki isn't just evil, she's a product of a broken system, and Yusuke isn't just lazy, he's a victim of isolation. What they didn't know was that the judgment wasn't about who won the game. It was about how they handled the loss. In the end, Misaki is sent to the void because her soul was consumed by a selfish, destructive void of its own making. Yusuke, having finally felt a connection to another person, even a violent one, is sent to be reincarnated. The emotional payoff is brutal. You see Misaki's face as the elevator doors close, the realization hitting her that her fame, her money, and her lies mean nothing in the face of eternity. She is erased, while the boy who wanted to die is given a second chance to live. As the episode closes, Chiyuki confronts Decim. She's starting to realize that the Arbiters aren't gods. They're just cogs in a machine that doesn't understand the people it's processing. The tension between them is at a breaking point, and the mystery of Chiyuki's own death begins to surface. Who is she? Why doesn't she have her memories? And why is she the only human who can look at Decim and see a monster? The stage is set for a deeper dive into the dark hierarchy of the afterlife. And trust me, you aren't ready for what's waiting on the higher floors. Your life was a lie, your death was a joke, and now your soul is literally a pawn in a game of Twister played on a bed of spikes. Imagine being trapped in a room where every move you make could send the person you worship into an endless, screaming void, while a cat-eyed bartender mocks your every scream. This isn't just a game of physical endurance. It's a brutal dissection of celebrity culture, obsession, and the terrifying realization that even the people we call gods are just dolls controlled by something far more sinister. In the afterlife, there is no VIP section. There is only the floor, the pain, and the judgment that waits for us all. If you thought the previous games were cruel, you haven't seen what happens when the Arbiters start getting bored. The story takes place in a world where even the judges are being judged. While Decim struggles with his growing human perspective, we are pulled away from Quindecim and into the higher floors of the Arbiter hierarchy. We meet Nona, the boss of the afterlife, and Ginty, an Arbiter who lacks even a shred of Decim's growing mercy. Ginty doesn't care about understanding humans. He thinks they are nothing more than stupid, emotional animals that deserve to be put down. This is where we learn the horrifying truth. Arbiters aren't allowed to have emotions because if they felt the weight of their own cruelty, the entire system would collapse. But Nona is playing a dangerous game, trying to see if a soul with human emotions can actually judge better than a machine. Kicks off, we get a peek behind the curtain of the afterlife's bureaucracy. We see Quinn, the former bartender of Quindecim, who is now buried in paperwork in the information department. She warns Nona that giving Decim human emotions is like playing with a ticking time bomb. But the real tension starts when we see Ginty's floor, Viginty. Unlike the classy, somber Quindecim, Ginty's bar is aggressive and filled with traditional Japanese masks that seem to mock the guests. We see a flashback to a test judgment involving a young boy and an old man. The boy is terrified, but the old man remains calm, almost accepting. It's a chilling reminder that death doesn't care about age or innocence. Decim is watching this, trying to learn, but the lesson he takes away is far darker than he expected. But that was just the beginning of the chaos. Back at Quindecim, Decim begins to dream a feat that should be impossible for an arbiter. He sees the black-haired woman, Chiyuki, in a different light. He starts to realize that her presence is changing him, making him question the very rules he was built to follow. The rules state that arbiters cannot quit judging, for that is the reason they exist. They cannot experience death, for that would bring them too close to being human. And they cannot feel emotion, for they are but puppets. But as Decim looks at his own hands, he starts to wonder who is pulling the strings. This episode serves as a calm before the storm, setting the stage for one of the most high-octane and emotionally draining games in the series. Now, shifts gears completely, throwing us into a neon-soaked nightmare featuring Harada, a flashy J-pop idol from the band CHA, and Mayu, his biggest, most obsessed fangirl. Mayu is the definition of high energy. She's loud, she's colorful, and she is absolutely thrilled to be in a room with her idol, even if it means they're both dead. Ginty, annoyed by her personality, decides to make the game as painful as possible. They have to play Twister on a specialized board where the circles are pressure-sensitive triggers. If you fall, or if you hit the wrong spot, it's not just a game over, it's a physical catastrophe. The game starts off as a joke, with Mayu fanning over Harada's every move, but the real nightmare was about to start when the board began to heat up. The circles turn into glowing heaters, burning their skin with every contact. Then, the board begins to tilt over a literal pit of spikes. Harada, who lived his life as a shallow playboy using women for his own ego, suddenly finds himself in a position where he has to choose between his own life and the life of a girl who literally gave him everything. You see the mask of the perfect idol start to crack? He's scared, he's sweating, and he starts to resent Mayu for being the reason he's in this mess. What he didn't know was that Mayu's devotion went deeper than just being a fan. When the game reaches its peak, Harada is hanging off the edge of the board, holding Mayu's hand. Ginty gives him an ultimatum. Drop her and live, or hold on and both of you might fall. In a shocking twist of character growth, Harada looks into Mayu's eyes that still see him as a hero, and he decides to try and save her. For the first time in his life, he does something selfless. But Ginty isn't interested in redemption stories. He wants to see the darkness, and he pushes them both to the absolute limit of physical and mental exhaustion. The emotional payoff is a double-edged sword. Mayu, realizing that her idol is actually willing to die for her, feels a sense of peace she never had in life. She's willing to sacrifice herself so he can go on. It's a beautiful, tragic moment that highlights the best and worst of human obsession. However, Ginty's judgment is cold and swift. He doesn't give them a happy ending like Decim did with the bowling couple. The episode ends with a chilling scene of the elevators closing, leaving the audience wondering if Harada's one moment of goodness was enough to save his soul, or if Ginty's cynicism doomed them both from the start. This episode leaves us with a lingering sense of dread. If Decim is becoming too human and Ginty is too cruel, who is actually right? Chiyuki is watching all of this, her memory slowly returning like a dark ink stain spreading across a white cloth. She starts to realize that the afterlife isn't a place of justice. It's a place of observation where humans are dissected like insects under a microscope. And the next guest to arrive at Quindecim isn't a stranger. He's someone who knows exactly what it feels like to take a life. And he's coming to show Decim that some souls are too broken to ever be fixed. What if the man standing across from you, the one you're forced to play a game with, is the very person who ruined your life? Imagine waking up in a bar, your hands still shaking from the adrenaline of a fight, only to realize that the stranger next to you is the monster you've been hunting for years. This isn't just a game of chance. It's a direct confrontation with the person who murdered your family. In the afterlife, there is no police, no courtrooms, and no mercy. There is only a table, a puck, and the chance to finally, truly, break the person who broke you. But here's the terrifying truth. In the world of Quindecim, seeking justice can turn you into the very monster you hate. By the time this game ends, the floor will be stained with more than just sweat. It'll be stained with the absolute darkness of the human soul. The story takes place in a world where memories are the ultimate currency. While Decim prepares for his next guests, we are taken deep into the Information Bureau, a place that looks more like a chaotic library of souls than a divine office. This is where the memories of the dead are processed, edited, and sent to the arbiters so they can prepare their games. We meet Quinn, the woman who ran Quindecim before Decim took over. She's exhausted, drinking heavily, and mourning the fact that she can no longer taste the nuances of human emotion. She reveals a chilling secret. Arbiters are essentially biological computers. They are dummies infused with human memories just long enough to perform a judgment. Then they are wiped clean. But Nona is doing something forbidden. She's letting Decim keep his bugs, his growing emotions, to see if he can become something more. As episode 7 unfolds, we see the weight of eternity. Quinn explains to Nona that the job of an arbiter is a curse. To judge humans, you have to understand them, but to understand them, you have to feel their pain. And if you feel their pain, you eventually break. This is why the rules exist, to keep the judges from drowning in the misery of the people they process. But the conversation is interrupted by the arrival of 2 new guests at Quindecim. Shimada, a young man with a protective streak for his sister, and Tatsumi, a middle-aged detective with a cold, analytical gaze. On the surface, they look like ordinary people, but as Decim looks through their memory files, even his stoic face flinches. These aren't just 2 random deaths. These 2 men are linked by a chain of blood and vengeance that started long before they reached the bar. But that was just the beginning. The atmosphere in Quindecim shifts from the usual mystery to a heavy, suffocating dread. Shimada is nervous, checking a bag he brought with him, a bag that contains a blood-stained knife. Tatsumi, the detective, remains eerily calm, watching Shimada like a predator watching its prey. They are told they must play a game to save their lives. But the game Decim chooses is one of the most physically demanding yet, air hockey. It seems simple enough, but in Quindecim, every puck you hit represents a part of your opponent's body. If the puck goes into the goal, the physical impact isn't just felt, it's experienced as a localized explosion of agony. The death rally is about to begin, and it's going to peel back the skin of their morality until there's nothing left but raw, ugly truth, where the series takes a dive into the deepest, darkest pits of the human psyche. The air hockey game starts with a frantic, high-speed energy. Every time the puck slams into the side of the table, the sound echoes like a gunshot. As the score climbs, the memories start to leak out. We see Shimada's life, a life dedicated to protecting his younger sister after their parents died. We see the tragedy. His sister was brutally assaulted by a stalker. We see Shimada, consumed by a rage so white-hot it blinded him, grabbing a knife and going to the stalker's apartment to finish it. But when he got there, he found someone else already there. He found a man standing over a body. What he didn't know was that the man in the apartment was Tatsumi. And this is where the real nightmare begins. Tatsumi wasn't just a detective. He was a man who had lost his own wife to a criminal and had decided to become a vigilante judge. He didn't just catch criminals, he watched them suffer. He admits, with a terrifying, hollow smile, that he watched Shimada's sister get attacked just so he could follow the criminal back to his hideout and kill him later. He used a young girl's trauma as bait. The revelation is sickening. Shimada isn't just playing a game against a stranger. He's playing against the man who could have saved his sister, but chose to let her suffer for the sake of his own twisted justice. The escalation is instant and violent. The game of air hockey turns into a literal battle for dominance. Shimada is screaming, his eyes bloodshot, hitting the puck with enough force to shatter the table. Every goal he scores sends Tatsumi into a fit of agonizing pain, but Tatsumi doesn't stop smiling. He mocks Shimada, telling him that they are the same both killers, both fueled by hate. This wasn't a game anymore. It was an execution. Decim and Chiyuki watch in horror. Chiyuki, specifically, is losing her mind. She sees the injustice in it all. She sees that Shimada is a victim of his own love, while Tatsumi is a monster who has long since abandoned his humanity. But the real nightmare was about to start when the game reached its final point. Decim, pushed by the intensity of the darkness surfacing in Shimada, decides to escalate the judgment device. He makes the pain even more realistic, even more debilitating. He wants to see if Shimada will choose mercy, or if he will succumb to the desire to torture Tatsumi. The episode ends on a heart-stopping cliffhanger. Shimada has the final puck, and Tatsumi is defenseless. The choice isn't just about winning the game, it's about whether Shimada will cross the line and become exactly like the man he hates. The tension is so thick you could cut it with the knife in Shimada's bag, and as the puck leaves the mallet, the fate of two souls hangs in a balance that is tipped toward total destruction. What if the person you were supposed to trust with your soul was actually the one pushing you into the abyss? Imagine standing over your worst enemy, a mallet in your hand and a puck at your feet, knowing that one final strike won't just win you a game, it will inflict an eternity of pain on the man who watched your sister suffer. This is the moment where justice dies and vengeance takes its place. In Quindecim, the line between a victim and a villain is as thin as a razor's edge, and Shimada is about to find out that when you stare too long into the void doesn't just stare back, it reaches out and pulls you in. By the time this match is over, Quindecim won't just be judging a human, he'll be witnessing the complete disintegration of a soul. The story takes place in a world where the arbiters aren't just referees, they are architects of despair. As the air hockey game between Shimada and Tatsumi reaches its breaking point, we see the true horror of Quindecim's methods. He isn't just watching the darkness, he is actively manufacturing it. He uses judgment devices to amplify their physical pain, pushing Shimada to a state of primal, murderous rage. He wants to see if a human can ever truly choose mercy when given the power of a god. But what he didn't know was that some wounds are too deep to heal, and some memories are too toxic to survive. As episode 9 opens, the bar is vibrating with the sound of Shimada's screams. He's no longer playing for points, he's playing for blood. Every time the puck slams into Tatsumi's goal, the detective's body contorts in a way that shouldn't be humanly possible. But here's the twist. Tatsumi is enjoying it. He laughs through the agony, telling Shimada that by giving in to his hatred, he has proven that they are exactly the same. Chiyuki, watching from the sidelines, can't take it anymore. She screams at Quindecim to stop the game, accusing him of being the real monster for forcing a grieving brother to become a murderer. She realizes that the arbiter system isn't finding truth. It's breaking people until only the worst parts of them remain. But the real nightmare was about to start when Shimada realized that even killing Tatsumi wouldn't bring his sister's smile back. In a final, heart-wrenching surge of violence, Shimada scores the winning goal, but the victory is hollow. Both men are broken beyond repair. Quindecim, influenced by the raw intensity of the situation and Chiyuki's emotional outburst, makes a decision that sends shockwaves through the bar. He sends both Shimada and Tatsumi to the void. It's a brutal, cynical end to a match that started with a quest for justice. As the elevators close, the silence in Quindecim is deafening. Quindecim looks at his hands, realizing that for the first time, the judgment didn't feel like a success, it felt like a failure. If the previous episode was an explosion of violence, haunting, quiet funeral, the atmosphere shifts dramatically as two new guests arrive. An elderly woman named Sachiko, but the focus isn't on a high-stakes game this time. Instead, the game is Old Maid, a simple card game that allows for conversation and reflection. Sachiko is a famous illustrator who spent her life drawing children's books, specifically a story called Chavat. As the cards are dealt, the memories start to float to the surface, but they aren't memories of blood or betrayal. They are memories of art, love, and the quiet beauty of a life well lived. But that was just the beginning of a revelation that would change everything for our protagonist. As Sachiko talks about her book, a story about a boy named Jimmy who tries to make a deaf girl named Chavat smile, Chiyuki starts to tremble. The images from the book trigger something deep within her locked memories. She remembers reading that book. She remembers the smell of the pages. And then, like a dam breaking, her own past comes rushing back. She looks at her hands and sees not an assistant, but a girl who lived for the ice. She was a professional figure skater whose career was cut short by a devastating injury. The loss of her dream wasn't just a setback, it was the end of her world. The real nightmare was about to start when Chiyuki finally remembered how she died. It wasn't an accident, and it wasn't a crime committed by another. In a moment of quiet, soul-crushing realization, she remembers the weight of the despair that led her to take her own life. The black-haired woman finally has a name, and she has a story that is far more tragic than any of the guests who have walked through the doors of Quindecim. She looks at Decim, not with anger, but with a profound, terrifying sadness. She realizes that she was judged the moment she arrived, but because she remembered she was dead, she was given a stay of execution. What she didn't know was that her presence had already fundamentally altered Decim's programming. As Sachiko is sent to be reincarnated, a peaceful departure for a soul that had completed its journey, Decim is left facing a human who is no longer just an observer. Chiyuki is a soul in limbo, and her time is running out. The episode ends with an emotional payoff that leaves the audience breathless. Decim asks Chiyuki to tell him more about the world, about the feelings he can't understand, and about the girl who just wanted to hear the sound of a smile. But the clock is ticking. Nona and the other arbiters are watching, and they won't let a defective judge and a suicidal soul stay in the bar forever. The final judgment isn't for a guest, it's for Chiyuki herself. Imagine being handed a single red button that can erase your biggest mistake, reverse your death, and put you back in the arms of your grieving mother. The catch? The moment you press it, a random person somewhere in the world drops dead, and their family inherits your exact same nightmare. This isn't just a thought experiment. It's the ultimate, final test in a purgatory that has finally stopped playing games. In Quindecim, the masks are completely gone. There are no darts, no bowling balls, and no arcade cabinets to hide behind. There is only a girl who realizes she threw her life away, a bartender who is slowly breaking his own programming, and a choice that will either save a soul or shatter the entire afterlife. The story takes place in a world where the judges are strictly forbidden from feeling, yet our arbiter, Decim, has done the impossible. He has grown a heart. After processing dozens of broken souls and witnessing the darkest corners of human nature, the time has finally come to judge his own assistant, Chiyuki. Because she arrived at the bar already knowing she was dead, her judgment was temporarily suspended. But the rules of the afterlife are absolute, and Nona, the boss of the arbiters, demands a conclusion. Decim must push Chiyuki to her absolute breaking point to see the true color of her soul, even if it destroys them both in the process. Decim does something totally unprecedented. He takes Chiyuki out of Quindecim. They travel down to the lowest, most hidden depths of the system, but when the elevator doors open, they aren't standing in a dark abyss. They are standing in Chiyuki's own living room. It's an incredibly detailed, flawless illusion of the human world, crafted specifically for her final judgment. The sudden shift from the eternal, neon-lit bar to the warm, familiar sunlight of a normal home is jarring, and it hits Chiyuki like a physical blow. She sees her old skating trophies and the life she permanently left behind. But that was just the beginning of the psychological torture. The illusion is so perfect that it includes the people she abandoned. Chiyuki looks down the hallway and sees her mother, alive, breathing, and completely broken. Her mother is kneeling in front of a quiet Buddhist altar, praying for her dead daughter, her voice cracking with a grief so profound it makes your chest tight just watching it. Chiyuki realizes the true devastation of her suicide. She didn't just end her own pain when she gave up on life, she violently transferred it directly into the heart of the person who loved her most. She falls to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. She is a ghost, forced to bear witness to the irreversible wreckage of her own choices. And this is where everything changes. Decim steps forward, holding a small device with a single button. His face remains stoic, but his eyes carry a heavy, agonizing weight. He tells her the rules of her final game. If she presses the button, the illusion will become reality. She will be resurrected. She can walk back into her home, hug her mother, and resume the life she threw away. The catch is devastatingly simple. To balance the cosmic scales of life and death, someone else in the world must die in her place. A complete, Stranger. Someone with their own family, their own dreams, their own mother who will cry at an altar. Decim isn't asking her to play a game of skill. He's asking her to commit murder to save herself. What she didn't know was that Decim is suffering just as much as she is. He is standing there, watching the only person he has ever truly cared about tear herself apart. Chiyuki's hand hovers dangerously over the button. The temptation is suffocating. She wants to live. She desperately wants to apologize to her mother. She wants to feel the cold rush of the ice under her skates just one more time. The camera pans frantically between her shaking hand, her weeping mother, and Decim's unreadable face. The suspense is unbearable. You find yourself glued to the screen, unsure of what you even want her to do. Will she succumb to the most primal human instinct survival at any cost, or will she choose to stay dead to spare a stranger? But the real nightmare was about to start as Chiyuki realizes the terrifying truth about human nature. She screams, openly admitting that a dark, selfish part of her wants to press it. The emotional momentum reaches a fever pitch as she imagines the unseen family of the stranger she would be killing. She realizes that grief is a universal virus, and she refuses to infect someone else with the exact same disease she gave her own mother. In a moment of absolute, heart-shattering clarity, Chiyuki pulls her shaking hand back. She chooses the permanent void of death over a second life bought with innocent blood. She collapses on the floor, the illusion of her home slowly dissolving around her, leaving only the cold, a hard reality of her fate. But as she cries, something utterly impossible happens. Decim, the emotionless dummy, the arbiter built from the ground up only to judge and discard, falls to his knees beside her. He reaches out, his face contorting in pain, and for the first time in the history of the afterlife, a judge sheds tears for the soul he is supposed to process. The perfect system of Quindecim is officially broken. What happens when God starts crying over the very soul he was built to erase? Imagine a machine, cold and perfect, suddenly breaking down because the weight of human grief is too heavy for its artificial heart to bear. This is the moment the entire universe of the afterlife holds its breath. You are no longer watching a trial. You are watching a rebirth. The red button lies untouched. The illusion of the human world has dissolved into a void of floating glass, and the emotionless bartender is on his knees, weeping like a lost child. In Quindecim, judgment was supposed to be absolute, but Chiyuki just proved that humanity, with all its flaws and agonizing sorrow, is something far too beautiful to be thrown into the darkness. By the time these final elevator doors close, you won't just be questioning what happens after you die. You'll be questioning how you're choosing to live. The story takes place in a world where the rules of death are written in stone, but one arbiter just shattered the tablet. We are thrust directly into the emotional aftermath of Chiyuki's impossible choice. She chose the permanent void over stealing a stranger's life, a decision so profoundly selfless that it completely short-circuited Decim's programming. He was created to draw out the darkness in people, to find the selfish, ugly truth hidden behind their smiles. But looking at Chiyuki, he found the exact opposite. He found a light so bright it burned right through his artificial shell. As episode 12 begins, the raw, visceral sound of Decim sobbing echoes through the empty void. It is a jarring, heartbreaking sound. This isn't a graceful, cinematic tear falling down a stoic cheek. This is ugly, desperate crying. Decim is mourning the beautiful, tragic life of the girl sitting in front of him, and he is mourning his own complicity in a system that tortures broken souls. Chiyuki, despite facing her own eternal erasure, reaches out and gently hugs the arbiter. In a total reversal of roles, the condemned human is comforting the omnipotent judge. The sheer emotional weight of this scene hits you like a freight train. You realize that Nona's dangerous experiment was a complete success. An arbiter with human emotions doesn't become a monster, he becomes merciful. But that was just the beginning of the final reckoning. The chaotic void fades, the crushing tension is gone, replaced by a bittersweet, quiet peace. They share a final, quiet conversation about what it means to live to make mistakes, and to carry the burden of those mistakes with grace. And this is where everything changes for the afterlife hierarchy. While Decim and Chiyuki share their final moments, the camera cuts to the absolute top of the system. Oculus, the terrifying, lotus flower-bearded god of the Arbiters, confronts Nona. He knows exactly what she did. He knows she implanted human memories into Decim to create a judge with empathy, a direct violation of the most sacred rules of death. Oculus warns her that Arbiters cannot be human, because if they feel the pain of the billions of souls they judge, they will go insane. But Nona stands her ground. She fires back that a system running on autopilot, judging complex human lives with a black and white binary code, is already broken. The tension is incredibly thick, but Oculus doesn't strike her down. He lets the experiment continue, leaving a terrifying curiosity gap about the future of this cosmic bureaucracy. What Nona didn't know was that Decim had already found his own answer to the madness. Back down at the bar, the time has finally come. The elevator doors open, glowing with the warm golden light of reincarnation. Chiyuki steps inside, her head held high. She has accepted her death, forgiven herself for her weakness, and is ready to move on. Before the doors close, Decim looks up at her. The man who spent his entire existence with a blank, mannequin-like stare does the impossible. He smiles. It's a genuine, warm, heartbreakingly beautiful smile. The door slides shut, and Chiyuki is gone, sent back into the cycle of life to try again. The emotional payoff is massive, leaving you hollowed out but entirely fulfilled. But the real story was about to start a new chapter. In the final moments of the series, we see Quindecim returning to its usual routine. The elevator chimes, and two new, confused guests step out into the luxury bar. But as Decim turns to greet them, the camera pans to the stool beside the bar. Sitting there is a perfectly crafted mannequin dressed exactly like Chiyuki, a silent guardian sitting beside him. Decim bows to the new arrivals. He is no longer just a judge of the dead. He is a protector of souls, forever changed by the girl who taught God how to cry. If this deep dive into the afterlife moved you as much as it did me, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more high-stakes anime recaps. We've explored the Bar of the Dead, but what happens when the monsters aren't in the afterlife, but living right next door? Next time, we're diving into a world where the line between human and demon is blurred by a single mask. You won't want to miss our breakdown of Tokyo Ghoul. Until then, keep living a life worth judging.